All right, we're back on Morning Line. Our guest with us this morning, Clint Kelly, malpractice attorney. As we went to a break, a sad call from Allison, her 51-year-old husband succumbing. He had sinus cancer, but it appears as though he died this past August from, what did you call it?
It sounded like it was what they call a polydrug overdose, which is basically an overdose of narcotics. He was taking oxycodone, according to Allison.
And some others that were prescribed.
And some other medications, and the quantities were high, but she said, you know, he was taking it as prescribed, and so it makes you wonder if there was either something in the prescription that was erroneous or whether the doctor who prescribed the medications, you know, mixed them up somehow. I don't know. We'll find out. The autopsy will reveal a lot, as will his pharmacy records and his medical records. But I have seen situations where patients have had not cancer, but have had extensive medical procedure surgeries, and the doctors prescribed too much pain medication. Had one lady who was 30 years old and took medication as prescribed, and she ended up dying from it. It was deemed a polydrug overdose. It was accidental death, but the doctors gave her a ton of pain medication.
Can that be an actionable case?
Yes, it can. I mean, there's a standard of care. You don't. There's a certain degree or certain amount of pain medication that you prescribe for particular situations, and if you know, if there are limits, and if you go beyond that limit, and of course the patient's doing what the doctor tells them to do, you can imperil the patient's life.
Now, I'm just wondering too, in terms of handling a case like this, doctors can prescribe this, and the key thing that you said there was as prescribed. I mean, I can also see in some cases, I'm not saying this is the case in Allison's, that a patient maybe, you know, is really feeling the pain and the doctor prescribes one pill and he says, you know, I'm just going to take 3 tonight. You know, I mean, is that an issue to have to prove that, okay, well, we prescribed him to him, but he apparently must have taken a lot more than he should have. And again, I'm not saying that's Allison's husband's case, but in general.
It can. And
I mean, how do you prove around that? Because I could see the hospital arguing, well, Clint, I know you're bringing this lawsuit against us, but how do you know he didn't take more than what it was we prescribed?
I used to take, Nick, a hardline approach on these cases years ago because I thought it was a fairly simple matter. You take the pain pills as prescribed. You don't deviate. I've learned a lot more over the last 10 years about opiates, the addictive power of opiates. The fact that they have to be monitored so closely by physicians. And so there's a patient compliance issue, no question, but there's also physician responsibility in these situations to make sure that the patient does not grow so dependent on the medication or become addicted to it that it imperils the patient's life.
Keep writing prescription after prescription. And we see this with a lot of the pain clinics and stuff like that just go over the top.
So you understand what I'm saying? There's so shared responsibility here. And there is a compliance issue, obviously, in all these cases, perhaps, but there has to be some responsibility in the healthcare provider because they know how addictive these drugs are.
Yeah, again, standard of care and how far and whether they went. And again, this was a gentleman maybe recovering from sinus cancer, something I'm not so familiar with, but that it appears his cause of death, as she said from the medical examiner, was these drugs that had been prescribed, not the cancer. Cancer didn't kill him here. Let's go to Jesse. Jesse, good morning.
Oh.
Hi, Jesse. How can we help you?
Well, I'm having a little difficulties here. I have been at Walmart for 12 years full time, and I had a side pain. It was so terrific that I had to go and see a doctor. And so when I did, they did a CT scan. All right, out of that CT scan, they sent me to several other doctors misdiagnosing it. And I was in pain so severe that nobody could give me anything to help me. And what it was, I found out at my last, when I went in for my colon test, the nurse said, "Did you know you had a twisted intestine?" I said, "No, but I do now." And I was throwing up my food. I couldn't eat. I've lost over 30 pounds. I've lost my job. All because of malpractice.
You're saying that they should have, well, okay, Clint, go ahead.
Let's stop first.
They should have took care of that, and I would have been back on my job.
Okay, answer some questions for Clint here.
When did you first report the pain?
The very day that I was at work, it hit me, and I first thought maybe a possible kidney stone.
But how long ago was it? When did you?
September the 28th, and September the 30th, I got to see the doctor.
All right, so it's been within the year, is that correct?
It's been within a year.
All right, now, if you heard the term used in
suffering from it because I can't eat.
Okay, listen up here.
Yeah, have you heard the term intestinal torsion? Has someone used that term with you?
No.
All right. Have you had any surgery done within the last year?
No, other than the colon and the one where they go down your throat.
Right.
I'm going blank here.
Well, okay. So did they fix your condition, or is it still twisted?
Oh, I'm still twisted. I can't eat. I've lost 30 pounds.
And what is their plan for you?
Yeah, what do they say? How are they going to treat you?
No.
You're not being treated. Well, they finally diagnosed it. So what did that doctor who said you got a twisted intestine?
No, my doctor, which is my regular doctor, tells me that it's my nerves. I said, sir, I've had nerves since I can remember. I took care of dying parents at both sides, my husband's and mine. And I said, if it's nerves, then I should have done had this long before now.
Jesse, you need to go get another opinion.
I'm fixing to do that, but I am going to take them to court.
Yeah, you need to get, before you go to court, you need to go get another opinion to find out if this is something that needs to be treated.
I am now. Barely, all I can eat is cream potatoes with nothing in it. If I put anything in it at all, it would have to be broth from chicken with no grease.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know. And she says she's going to take him to court. I guess her argument would be that it should have been properly diagnosed and they missed it.
Yeah, I mean, but this is fuzzy.
Yeah.
And the reason it's fuzzy is the way she describes this, it sounds like it's an intestinal torsion, which is just what you think it is when the intestines twist.
It sounds painful.
You have to fix that surgically. There's no, okay, go home and heal up or just go along about your business, because you can die from it. I mean, it can cause a constriction of blood vessels and you can quickly die from it. So there's something missing here that I'm not getting from her. But I'll tell you, Jesse, I'd go get an opinion first before I'd start thinking about going to court, because you need to make sure you're taken care of.
Yeah. I just wanted to, as we get near the end of the show, are there any other cases nationally, perhaps, that have caught your mind, or eye, rather? You know, we talked about the concussion issue in the NFL and some of the new things. It seems like something new on that front. I saw the other day the doctor who discovered that condition in NFL players said he would bet his bottom dollar O.J. Simpson suffers from it. But the only way to diagnose it is to biopsy a brain once you're dead. And, you know, those lawsuits and money coming out of that, I don't know if that's so much malpractice, but, you know, it's an injury.
Well, you know, the thing about O.J. was doing just fine running through airports for Hertz commercials and acting on movies very well. And
Capricorn 1, classic.
And doing sportscasting. Yeah. So, you know, if he had CTE at that time, he certainly hit it pretty well. I would hate to think that someone would say that that's an excuse for killing two people and then robbing from people.
Yeah, and I'm not sure he was saying that, but who knows? Violence can be associated with it. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was class actions. You sometimes do those. You have individual cases you take on. Are there any class actions you can tell us about, or things that you're working on now?
Yeah, drug cases.
Drug cases.
Particularly Xarelto, where patients have had bleeding disorders that have either led to death or serious gastrointestinal injury. There are a lot of those cases pending right now. We handle those cases as well, including the Marina cases you and I've talked about, the IUDs.
Done a story on that, sure, where they migrate.
That's correct. They leave the uterus and find themselves in the patient's spine or in their belly or somewhere else.
How did those work, by the way? I mean, the lawyers get together, you collect as many clients as you can, say, with a specific drug. When a settlement comes down, we all know the lawyers are the ones that get paid.
Well, we pay for the cases to get them to court.
I know, and then you divvy it up among you know, possibly thousands of injured.
Nick, if there weren't lawyers, these patients wouldn't get paid anything. So let's tell it like it is. But how they're handled in a basically called a mass tort, where all these people come together, and it's handled in basically one large lawsuit, and then there is an opportunity to settle them, and many of them do settle. And there's a grid set up where patients are paid based on the degree of their injury, so they don't have to go to court. It's in the patient's interest not to have to go to court.
Right.
But for those who don't settle, there is an opportunity where they can litigate their case separately. But there would be no money, no payments, no one holding these drug companies accountable if it weren't for the lawyers.
And you're right. Ultimately it is. And you guys have a right to make a living. But the bottom line, when people want to bash an attorney for something like that, you recognize without that, you're getting nothing.
That's right.
Nothing. And something certainly is better than nothing. In a lot of these cases, you get quite a bit. Are most of those cases tried in federal court?
Yes.
Okay, so you do federal and, is that it? Did you ever do any of the individual cases in federal court for any reason? Would that be something that's across state lines, or?
Yes, it would be federal court because it is across state lines. That's because the drug company is almost invariably in another state from the patient who took the drug.
Okay. Listen, just as we wrap up with a couple minutes left, I just want to, again, recap. You're going to see him and his clients in a story tomorrow night. The promos are running right now, but it's a case. He gets a lot of cases, and we talk about them sometimes. Not everyone he gets makes the news like this, and I think you'll understand why when you see it. By the way, how are your clients doing?
The mother's having a lot of difficulty getting over this, and for reasons you understand because you met her. I think probably the most difficult part of it for her is the feeling of helplessness that you have, because there was nothing these parents could do to prevent this. Almost, you and I have talked about this, 90+% of the cases, we know the patient usually has some avenue to get around it unless they're in surgery and they're knocked out. These patients had no ability to prevent this from happening other than not going to this hospital. And that feeling of helplessness and what's happened to them, it just feels like a violation.
And it's dealing with a newborn in a place that you have said and during our interview should have been the safest place in the world for that baby.
The safest place, and in fact,
I mean, a nursery. I mean, they monitor things.
I mean, that's supposed to be the most sanctified place that we have, and short of going to church, is a place that takes care of children. A nursery. It's just, Nick, there's no excuse for it.
Yeah, and when you see this, it'll resonate because you're thinking about what you feel and how protective you are of a newborn. It's just, everyone's over the top. Every mother's overprotective the moment that baby comes. Anything, they just want everything to go perfect, and then to have something like this way over the top, and it involves a switching of identity of babies. And I'm not just talking about that alone. What happened to the baby? It's a story that needs to be out there so you're aware of it. And we need to talk maybe next time you come on the ways you prevent problems in the hospital.
I hope this will cause hospitals, in particular this one, to adhere to safety procedures better, because it's just inexcusable.
All right, listen, watch. It'll be tomorrow night. And I'm going to give it again at the end of the show when we say goodbye to Clint. But let's put your number up just in case, because several people have called. Again, 824-3703 is the number over there on East Main Street in Hendersonville. I've been to his office before, and when they call that, it's a free consultation, right?
Absolutely.
And they'll probably talk to who?
They'll probably ask to speak to Pat. Pat's the one that takes the calls. Of course, you can ask to speak to me as well.
If you're there, yeah.
And it costs nothing to make that call. Consultation's always free.
Okay, and if she gets enough on the call, then they'll arrange for the individual to come by and meet with you, right?
That's correct. She'll send me the intake information. I'll look it over. I mean, obviously, there's some that I realize I just aren't going to make it. There's no point having the potential client come in. But most of them, yes, I'll have them come in and speak to me and go over the case to determine whether or not I want to take it.
Gotcha. Clint, as always,
thank you, Nick.
Pleasure, my
Good to
friend.
see you.
Listen, and I'd like to hear back from you if you check up on Allison. That was a very sad case. Take a break. I'll be back with a programming note about tomorrow right after this. Stay with us.